Hello beautiful creative friends, it's Belinda and I am so happy to be here with you today sharing my first project for the Confessions of a Paper Addict Design Team. Now as we kick off the month of October, I am of course diving straight into documenting some Halloween stories, and today I'm going to be working with this brand new cut file in the Confessions of a Paper Addict shop. This one's called October 31 for obvious reasons, and you'll find the link to the store down in my description box below. I've got some photos from our Halloween last year, that's 2022, that I haven't yet documented. I've got a photo of the kids in their costumes and a photo of me, and this was when we were all ready to go out trick-or-treating. Now I am still waiting on some new Halloween crafting supplies to arrive here, so for this layout I'm going to be working with some older products. I've got Crepe Paper's Hello Pumpkin or Hey Pumpkin line, and I've also got a few bits and pieces from a Fancy Pants Halloween collection, and I'll provide the details of that down in the description box below. So as you can see, I have cut this from black cardstock, and I have already gone ahead and backed the title there off camera. I don't have a really solid idea of where I'm going with this just yet, so it's just going to be, let's just see how it all works out. So with that, let's hop on to fast forward now and see how this one comes together. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do with this layout is to create my background. Now I am still loving more of a clean look to my layouts and my projects. I love a white background, and I think I always will love a white background. I'm not really big on pattern paper backgrounds, but I do enjoy building up some layers with different types of mixed media, different types of textural elements. So that's what I'm actually going to be doing with this layout here. To begin with, I've grabbed this stencil. This is a 12 by 12 stencil, and I'm sorry, I really have no idea where it's come from. I would have had this in my stash for well over a decade. It's just got this, it's kind of like a chain look to it. The stencil itself is a little bit tricky to use because some of those pieces that are stuck together there's a really fine join between them, so they do have a little bit of a tendency to flip up. So although we are on super speed now, I was being quite careful while I was stenciling to just make sure that I don't get too much of the ink underneath the stencil. And I'm using two different distress oxides. I've got the Lost Shadow, which is one of the newer ones that I'm working with now, and I also used the milled lavender, and I'm just randomly choosing spots to add those. So that's all finished. I'm going to pull the stencil off. You can see that there are some spots there where it's not a super clean line, where it has sort of smudged a bit, but I figured because this is a Halloween layout, that kind of look it really fits well with the theme. Now I thought that I would try to pull some of this ink back up by throwing some water on with distress oxides. If you're not familiar with them, you can, once you've laid the color down, you can add water to the top and then sponge it off with just some paper towel, and it will give a bit of a bleached effect. It didn't actually work at all. I think because the lines were so fine, there just was no way for me to get the water in the right place. So I really am struggling with how I'm going to actually fit these pieces on my layout. So you can see I'm just playing around with different placements, different layouts. In hindsight, I probably did cut that title piece, the cut file, a little bit too big. But in the end, I make it work, and I'm really happy with the layout. It just took a little bit of fussing around to try and find something that I was happy with. So that's what I'm going to end up going with the title on the top. I thought about putting the photos, layering the photos over the top of the title, laying the title over the top of the photos, but in the end I have them completely separate. But the reason I wanted to get the placement of those correct before is because I wanted to add another layer of mixed media. So this is using some Prima light texture paste and just a really simple script stencil, and I'm just adding it in 3 spots around the page, and I'm making sure that they are going to be visible underneath that cut file title and my photos. I left that to dry, probably not quite for long enough. And now I'm coming in to add in some splatters. So I'm starting off with this dark purple. This is the Villainous Potion from in the Distress Oxide. And I'm also going to add some Liquitex black acrylic ink and some Liquitex silver acrylic ink splatters. Now, it's been a long time since I've built a background with these layers, and I'm a little bit out of practice. In hindsight, I probably should have put the splatters down first before I put the texture paste down. I did give the texture paste enough time to dry, but when the splatters landed onto the texture paste, it's quite porous, so it soaked them up and it sort of spread. But again, it's documenting Halloween, that sort of distressed, messy look. I think really it works. If it doesn't work at Halloween, when does it work? So I'm not too bothered by it, and some of it does get covered up anyway. So now I'm ready to start working on my photo layers. I've got these two photos. They don't really coordinate all that well. The photo that I took of my kids was taken outside in the afternoon sun, and the photo of me was taken inside in indirect light. I thought about changing them to black and white just to make them a little bit more cohesive, but I felt that in black and white you kind of lost some of the impact of the photos. So you lost the greens in my daughter's dress and the purple in my little headband. So I kept them in color, and then I'm just trying to make sure that I bring in those colors into the papers and embellishments that I'm using, just to sort of make the whole layout feel a little bit more cohesive. So I'm going with just some really simple patterned paper mats behind my photos. I started off with a white border, which I add to all of my photos on all of my layouts. I like the added dimension of a white cardstock border. I've also used a black and white polka dot patterned paper from Crepe Paper, and then I just grabbed a couple of different pattern papers from some paper pads that I have in my stash. And I'm just showing you there how the background is completed with some stitching around the edge. And the other thing that I was struggling with was with this cut file, it didn't look finished to me. There was just something that wasn't quite working when I laid it down. And then I thought, maybe I can give it a little bit of a border, just the number 31. So I took my white jelly roll pen and I really carefully drew a border around the outside of that giant number 31, and I think it looks fantastic. So much better. Now, to add another layer of texture and visual interest and to really build up that background, I've pulled out my stash of gauze, which again is very spooky, Halloweeny. It's kind of like, what you wrap a mummy up in. And I'm placing that down behind where my photos are going to sit. Then I'm going to make sure that the bottom of the cut file is sitting over the top of that gauze. And what that does is it removes what wasn't working well for me, which was having the title and the photos just feel like two separate elements on the page, like there was no connection between them. So having that gauze behind the photos and then having the title touching the gauze and then the photos on top of the gauze, it really helps to bring it all together. So it feels like the layout everything really belongs on the page, rather than having just a couple of, really bold pieces thrown on that really don't have any connection to each other. I hope that makes sense. That's what I was thinking anyway. Now, because I do have mixed media on the background, I've added some foam tape behind the title, but I did also off camera add some wet glue behind. And for the photos, which are going on top of the gauze, I'm using the Helmar's 450. It's that quick dry adhesive. It's the best adhesive that I can find for adhering anything down to something fabricy or really textured. It's fast, it's nice and thick, it gets into all the gaps, but the downside is it is such a pain to get out of the bottle. You can see I'm squeezing, and I'm not a weak person. I'm quite strong, but I have such a hard time getting that glue out of the bottle. But I got there, and then just to make sure I'm layering some heavy pieces, I'm just about to grab an old uni textbook and just layer that on top and leave it to sit for a little while to dry. Now I'm ready to start doing some embellishing. So I've gone through my embellishment packs, the bits and pieces that I had from that Fancy Pants collection, and also the embellishments that I have from the Crepe Paper Hey Pumpkin collection. I've pulled out some things that I think will go quite well, and as I mentioned before, I'm trying to bring in some of the colors that are in the photos just to really help bring them together. So I have got some of the orange, which is in the title and is of course really iconic when it comes to Halloween. I've also got some sort of off-white colors, which like an off-white beigey color, which ties in with the costume that my son is wearing. I've got some purple, which is in my little headband, and I've also got some little bits of green that I will come in with a little bit later. So I'm only going to create 2 embellishment clusters here on either side of the photos, and I'm trying to, because I am only creating 2, I'm not following that rule of 3, which is really a really simple way for making sure that you've got a design that works. I'm not following that rule of 3, so I'm trying to make sure that there is balance and connection between the 2 embellishment clusters. So you'll see that I'm repeating some of the elements. There were these little tags which were from the Fancy Pants collection, one that said trick, one that said treat. I've cut those down and then layered up some of the really pale orange polka dot from a crepe paper card. I'm also bringing in that same purple, which is some stamped pieces, and I'm making sure that that's repeated on each cluster. Now that little label that I'm working on now, that was strategically placed to cover up the clock that was behind my head that, try as I might, I could not remove in Photoshop. So here is coming in a little bit of that green. We've also got some holographic text there, which again, I just find that really lends itself well to documenting Halloween, and another little bit of green down there. Now I toyed with the idea of having this little tag sticking out from the top just to fill in that little bit of space that's there, because the photos they're not quite straight, they're sort of off center, so it has created a little bit of extra space between the photo on the right and the title up the top, but I thought I would just leave it. I felt that putting something in there would just sort of throw off the balance of the design altogether. Now to finish off, I'm coming in with some orange sequins. I have no idea where I got these from. I just got these from. I just had this tiny little plastic bag with, I think there was only about 6 or 7 of these sequins in there. So I thought I would make use of them on this layout as a little bit of an embellishment sprinkle. And then to finish off, I'm going to come in with some holographic cardstock stars. I have this brilliant little confetti star die, which is no longer available, unfortunately, but it was from Prima. And I love cutting out lots of stars, throwing them into a bowl, and then using them to finish off lots of different projects, from scrapbooking layouts to project life spreads to my Traveler's Notebook layouts, mini albums. I just love them, stars in all different colors. And that's what I'm finishing off this layout with today. So I do hope you have enjoyed watching this process video. If you do have any comments or questions, please go ahead and leave me a comment down in the description box below. If you have enjoyed this video, I would love for you to go ahead and give me a thumbs up. It really does help with growing my channel. And I think that's about it for now. There are some close-up photos coming in just a moment, but for now I will leave it there and say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.